Welcome to another edition of Resurrection Parish's Town Hall meetings. This evening we gather in prayer as a family, as a community of faith, because our topic this evening is just about that. All in the family, being family, community, and how we participate together as people of God. During this Advent season, as we are in December here, we talk about that sense of how God came together as human beings and with human beings, and how we as people of God are able to acknowledge that presence of Christ in each other, as well as bring in our faith life, the traditions, and the many hopes and joys that have been with us as a Christian community for many, many years and centuries. But what brings us together? What are those things and areas of our life that challenge us and yet bring us comfort? What are those ways in which we too in our own lives need each other, need other people in order to live more fully in how God is asking each one of us? There are two speakers this evening, Juanita Piscal and Peter Weiss. We're going to speak a little bit about how, from their perspective, how they can see God working in our world, and especially in the incarnation, how God becomes within ourselves ways in which we too can be Christ in our world today. So we take a moment in prayer and ask for the blessing of our God to be with us again during this Advent season, that God may gift us with a coming of that fullness of spirit, that each one of us may grow in our own faith, not just faith within ourselves, but faith that brings us in to relationship with others, bringing faith and hope into the world through our traditions, through our hopes, to the way God is calling us to be in our world today. So bless especially those in need in our world today. Especially remember those who are affected by the tornadoes I went through recently. There's many areas of our world that are dealing with difficulties, not just of weather, but of famine, of war, and that each of us may be grateful for that gift of God's grace that is here with us. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Jackie Staley is going to be the big organizer for this evening. Thank you, Jackie. And you're going to be introducing our speakers for tonight.
The call of family, community, and participation, to me is kind of like family is developed into community, which then encourages participation. And we have an example, a vibrant example of that in our Hispanic community in Green Bay. And so our first speaker will then talk about how her traditions in her community have fostered family and community and encouraged participation. And our second speaker will be on immigration, and that is an issue very pertinent to today, as we know. And so we'll touch on those. So our first speaker is Juanita Piscal, who is the Hispanic coordinator of ministry at St. Philip the Apostle Parish in Green Bay. And Juanita has, and is an example of a person like that you ask, when you know you want something done, you ask a busy person. Whoa. She and her husband parent 7 children, and of course she works. She also helps other families that she comes in contact with what various needs. So she's a really busy person, and we're very grateful that she will be with us tonight, especially to talk about Our Lady of Guadalupe and the Hispanic tradition of Posada. So we welcome Juanita Piscal.
Hello. Today I would like to start with a quote from Archbishop Jose Gomez. He said, "The church in this country and every one of us has this responsibility to continue the task that the Virgin gave to San Juan Diego, to build the shrine with our lives, to build a society that glorifies God and is worthy of the dignity of the human person. I would like to show a little bit about what Las Posadas is and Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then I will connect it to Bishop Gomez's quote. Can you put up the second slide? Yeah, that one. Thank you. So Las Posadas, the word posada means lodging. It's when Joseph and Mary were asking for a place to stay. Joseph and Mary were walking, right, and looking for that stay. So that's what Las Posadas mean. So it's a 9-day celebration. That's how we do it. And many know it as a Christmas novena, which consists of rosary. We pray the rosary for those 9 days. We sing. We bring piñatas. We pass out candies to the kids, to children, and I'm sorry? That was what I was gonna say, and we eat a lot. Because we ask families to sponsor a posada. So it's different families that will come together to sponsor that day's posada. So we leave it up to them, whatever they want to bring and share with the community. But many times, like I say, it's candies, music, and a lot of food, a variety of food. So yeah, it's for 9 days, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful to gather in a community and to share our traditions with others, because many times in this celebration, not only Hispanics participate, but also Anglo people or people from other countries. So it's a great opportunity to share our traditions with them. So like I said, Las Posadas, it's a 9-day celebration. Here, what you see in this screen here, on the white part, that's a song or a litany, I want to say, where we separate the community during that time. For example, like this year, because of COVID, how we're going to do it is that one part of the people in the church will be the people from the outside, and the other half will be the people from the inside. So the people from the outside will be carrying Joseph and Mary, right, to demonstrate how they were asking for a place to stay. And they are in charge to recite the part of the outside people, right? So it's something like this. It's in the name of heaven, I humbly ask for shelter for my wife, beloved, who can walk no longer. And then the outside people, the inside people would say, this is no inn, you see, therefore be on your way. I dare not open this door to rogues to whom I fall prey. So there's this type of song that says this, and so that's how we do it as community there. So yeah, it's like 6 different verses that from each part that we share that day, and then at the end, towards the end of the song, the last place where Joseph and Mary ask for a lodging, that family says, yes, you are welcome. We welcome you, Joseph and Mary, so that our Savior is born. And we open the doors. So if we do it in a house, or usually like in other years, we would do it in the basement of our parish, and we do go through the doors. So we open the doors, and the people from inside welcome Joseph and Mary, and we start with a big song and with the piñatas and candies. So that we try to show what Joseph and Mary went through when they were looking for that place to stay. So that's pretty much what Las Posadas is. And then some parishes here in Green Bay, for example, St. Willibrod, one year, Joseph, my son who is here present, he was like 3 months when we were asked to be, for my husband and I to be Joseph and Mary. And so Joseph represented Jesus, and I remember they asked us to dress as Joseph, as Mary and Joseph, right, my husband and I. And before Mass started, we did this prayer, and then we went in church with Joseph in our arms, and then we had to put him in a baby crib there. Thank God he did great. Yeah, no cry, like he was just staring. Like he did great. But yeah, some parishes do it like that, with people that dress up as Joseph and Mary with a baby. So those couple of weeks before the last Posada, they will ask a family if they would like to participate. And yeah, so I think that was really nice to be able to do that at St. Willibrad's. Some other parishes, they just bring the little statues of Joseph and Mary. It depends, right? But usually that's what Las Posadas means. It's a novena, which representing Joseph and Mary looking for that place. And then the next one would be Our Lady of Guadalupe. Our Lady of Guadalupe, I don't know if you heard much about her, but one thing that I would really, really like to leave like very clear, like at the end, is that, or how would I say it? Many times we think that Our Lady of Guadalupe is for Hispanics only, or it's a celebration only for Hispanics. And no, her message was to all of America, to all the world. And that's something that I have really tried where I work to share with the English community. For them to know that Our Lady of Guadalupe, the message, her love, it's for everyone. So therefore, we would love for the English community to participate during this special celebration. A very great opportunity to share our stories, to know one another. So yeah, we'll be talking a little bit about that. So Our Lady of Guadalupe, she appeared from December 9th through the 12th in 1531. And here I would like to share a short video on what is the celebration of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
In the 15th and 16th centuries, the native people of Mexico City suffered conquest first by the Aztecs and then by the Spanish conquistadors. It was the custom of the Aztecs to harvest the conquered people as victims for human sacrifice, offered to the snake god Quetzalcoatl. By the Aztecs' own account, this cost 250,000 human lives per year. In the dedication of just one temple, a celebration lasting 4 days, they slaughtered more than 80,000 men and women. Now, as you can imagine, these native peoples lived a life of natural and supernatural terror. Yet the fear of their idols kept them trapped in idolatry, and they resisted conversion to the Christian faith. The best efforts of brilliant missionaries proved basically ineffective. Then, in 1531, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared in Mexico City to a peasant man named Juan Diego. He was an older man, a simple man, a convert to the Catholic faith, and he was hurrying on his way to Mass when Our Lady appeared. She asked him to go to the bishop and request that a church be built in her honor on that very spot at Tepeyac. Now, the bishop was skeptical and asked Juan Diego to provide a sign that the vision was authentic. When Juan Diego next saw Our Lady, she filled his overcoat with roses, even though it was winter, and roses were out of season. When the bishop took the roses from Juan Diego's rough garment, the men saw that Mary had miraculously left her image on the fabric. Juan Diego's overcoat was made of cactus fiber, so the relic shouldn't have lasted 50 years. And let's be honest, after 5 years, it should have been falling apart. But now, it's lasted half a millennium, and her image still looks with eyes of mercy upon hundreds of thousands of pilgrims. What happened in the wake of Juan Diego's visitation? Well, the bishop built that church at Tepeyac, of course. And soon, 9 million Native American people embraced the Christian faith. The entire continent converted to Catholicism. Where the missionaries and the military had failed, a poor man succeeded. with the assistance of his Blessed Mother. Mary told Juan Diego, "Am I not here? I who have the honor to be your mother? Are you not in my shadow and under my protection? Are you not in the hollow of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Do you need anything more? Do we need anything more?" The church is calling us to undertake a new evangelization, and the task seems daunting. In fact, it seems downright impossible. But are the obstacles today any greater than they were in 1531 for that man on the hillside of Tepeyac? Juan Diego was in his 50s. He was considered an old man, and he'd already outrun his life expectancy. Yet his evangelistic life was just beginning. And look what he was able to accomplish. Look what God was able to accomplish through him. Look what his mother inspired him to do. What, do you suppose, is God's plan for you and me?
So today's topic is family, community, and participation. And it says we're not only sacred, but also social. So it's through our celebrations that we can integrate with others, that we can learn more about others. It's through family, when families participate in the community, that we get to share. We have the opportunity to share our stories, where we come from, who we are, and discover what we are called to do. I really love the story behind Our Lady of Guadalupe and all the symbols that she has, all the symbols on her image, because it's the perfect definition of what we are called to do, to love one another, to share with others, and give that opportunity to others also know us. The topic also says, the way we organize our society in economics, politics, law, and polity directly affects human dignity and the capacity of individuals to grow in community. I come from Mexico. I came from Mexico when I was 6 years old, and I lived for 17 years right in the border with Mexico and Texas. And I lived a lot of discrimination, because early in when I was 6 years old, I remember I didn't have the opportunity to go to kindergarten. I started first grade, and I remember not knowing English. The only thing that I was able to kind of do okay in was math. And sadly but true, that year, my first grade teacher, she was really mean to me. Really mean. I want to say that that was what I understood, right, as a 6, 7-year-old girl. And throughout the years, I did see, like I said, a lot of discrimination, because with my family and my sisters, we didn't know the English language. We didn't, my mom was a single parent. She didn't have a driver's license. She didn't have a legal status in the U.S. So she had to find ways on how to provide for us, because we didn't qualify for governmental assistance. I remember that we would walk a lot to be able to go to church, to attend Mass. And just growing in this type of situation, I want to say, was very sad, but also it gave us the courage and the strength to work harder, to maybe I want to talk for myself. I took that attitude of saying, I want to prove that I can do it, that I can give something to this country. And I remember one time telling my mom, don't worry, Mom, one way or the other, we're gonna get through. You're gonna find a job. We're gonna have enough. And little by little, yes, she was able to provide for us. And when I was in school, I remember just telling my mom, "Don't worry, Mom. Like, I promise you that I'm gonna do good in school. I promise you that I'm gonna go to college and do all these things, right? So that now I can give you what you deserve." So many things happened. At the end, I wasn't able to go to college, but I had the great opportunity to come to Green Bay in my last semester, a senior semester, to West De Pere. And I am so grateful that I had great high school teachers there who were very patient with me and helped me a lot, because back in Texas, there was no need to speak English. So pretty much all my school was a lot of Spanish and back and forth, right? So when I moved here, when they told me that I had to do a presentation in English, I was like, no, I won't be able to do it. But they were very patient with me. Things happened and I wasn't able to go to college, but I got very involved at St. Willibrod's. I got very involved there, and I always had this love and passion to help others. Maybe because of what we had went through. That first day, when I still remember, I was 6 years old, when we crossed the border, we were left there by the riverbanks. Very close to that crossing point, there's a big supermarket. And I remember my mom, and we were 4 of us already. We walked to that store, asking a taxi to take us to this address. He took us to that address, and when we got there, they told us that we couldn't stay there. And I remember walking by the side of the street, and my mom saying that we were gonna go back to Mexico. And that same day, a lady stopped by and said if we needed a ride. On our way to the International Bridge, my mom told her right what was going on, and she stopped and she's like, no way you're going back to Mexico. You did the hardest part already, which was crossing the border, right? I am gonna help you. She took us into her 1-bedroom home. Imagine 5 with her, 6, 1 bathroom, 1 bedroom. There was no living room. It was just like a bedroom, living room, and the kitchen. But just, so when I got here and things changed here, and I wasn't able to go to college, I was able to get involved at St. Willibrod and just wanting to give back what I had received during those tough years of my life. And I dedicated all my free time that I had volunteering at St. Willibrod, and that's where I had the opportunity to get more involved with Las Posadas and Our Lady of Guadalupe. Because as a younger person, I wasn't really able to participate much, because I wasn't able to go to Mexico during that time, during those celebrations, because I was illegal too, and I wasn't able to go to the Mass, the local church where I lived in Texas, because it was far away. So just having the opportunity here to attend, I was able to learn more about our traditions as a Mexican person. So yes, that was there at St. Willibrod. So while I was serving there and participating, having that opportunity to participate in these 2 main celebrations, that's where I was able to share my story, but also to know other people. Other people that many times I might have thought that they didn't like me, because for one reason or the other, always feeling like rejected, or people not wanting me to be here. Many times I heard comments where they would say, "Oh, you illegal people don't pay taxes," or "you illegal people this or that." And by participating in these celebrations and having the opportunity to talk to the English community and share my story, they were able to understand much more of not only the celebration, but also why we come to the U.S., what we've been through. So it was a great opportunity, like I said, to participate with the English community. Then I was able to do different programs at the diocese with Tony Pickler here. And when my husband, it was my husband and I who decided to go to Discípulos de Cristo. And it wasn't because I wanted to learn more about my faith, it was because we're about to divorce. And we thought, we strongly believed that it was because we were not close to our faith. And we wanted to give ourselves that last opportunity to save our marriage. And I remember going to Father Andy and asking him to please help us to get into the Discípulos program. And that's where I met Tony and other great people. And little by little, with every class that I started taking, I was just getting in love with the Lord and just wanting to learn more and more and more. And here I am now, still working and loving and trying to serve as many ways as I can. But then I came to St. Philip's, where they asked me if I wanted to help the Hispanic community there. And I said yes. So it is also that great opportunity, not only to serve the Hispanic community, even though that's pretty much like my job, but I always tell Father, I don't want to do things only for the Hispanic community, but I want to take the opportunities of certain celebrations, of certain celebrations, to take that opportunity to share it with the English community. And let's stop saying we're both two communities in one church. It's one community who has people with with two languages, right? English and Spanish. So I'm trying little by little for people, right? So we can get in that habit of uniting our community and saying that we are one community with two different languages. When I started with my first year on Our Lady of Guadalupe, I remember trying to share some of the symbols that Our Lady has on the image, right? So that's something that I would like to, here already. I'm not gonna go through all of them, because there's a lot, but for example, here, an image as a Christian icon. I don't know if you're able to see her mantle, that it's color blue, and what that represents is the immortality and eternal happiness with God in heaven. This is the way Christians in that time interpret this image, right? Another one would be her hands folded in prayer that show honor, praise, and worship to God. The stars on the mantle indicate her title of the Queen of Heaven. There's this book that I used for this presentation that it says that the stars on her mantle were the exact location of the stars on that day, December 12th of 1531, but seen from outer space. So that's how they were on the sky of that day. What else did her bent knee, I don't know if you're able to see right here. Her bent knee is to show her humility before God. The angel on the bottom is Mary's servant. So that's how people would interpret all this. Here, I don't know if you can see this 4-petal flower which is right below this black ribbon. So that's at the height of the Immaculate Womb, represents the most true God for whom one lives. So that's how people interpreted that flower. And then the most important would be the cross, this little medallion here. So that's the Guadalupe Code as an image, as a Christian icon. And then the following slide, the next slide, would be as an Aztec Codex. That's me, right? So on this one here, can you hear me? Yes. So on this one here is the Aztec Codex. And this is beautiful because her message here is a message, St. John Paul II calls it a message of enculturation. Because she appeared with symbols that the Indians would understand. For example, here, the sun. Mary obscuring the sun signifies that she is more powerful than the sun itself, the greatest life-giving force on earth. And then the blue mantle symbolizes heaven. The hands, can you see they're folded in prayer? And then at the same time, her foot. Here in the bottom, you can barely see it. The foot, and then her knee, and then her hands. Doing this for the Indians, it was that position where they're about to dance and kind of like those hands looking like they're gonna open, they're offering something. So Our Lady there, who is she offering? Our Savior. The stars, well, I did talk about the stars. The sash or the ribbon there that only pregnant women in the Aztecs would wear it. The Aztec woman, would wear that ribbon. And then the pink tunic, the color of the rising sun, is a sign of the renewal of life. Flowers rooted in the sky signifies that heaven is the source of life for people. So remember that when Our Lady appeared, it had been already about 10 years, at least 10 years, that the Spaniards had been there and the missionaries trying to teach them, right? Trying to teach them about our Christian faith. And then what else here? The magnolia here, I don't know if you're able to see it. This flower here, it's kind of a shape. You can't really see it that clear, but it's kind of a heart shape, which is somewhere here. That represents, symbolizes the human heart that were offered to the gods. So remember that the Indians would make all those sacrifices to offer it specially to the sun god. So see how the image has symbols that the Indians would understand, would relate to. And then Mary's maskless face signifies that she is human and not a goddess. Her loose hair signifies that she is virgin. So for the Aztecs, when a girl, right, a youth would wear her hair like that, would signify that she's a virgin. Other amazing facts on the next slide, Katie, would be that her head is inclined at the same angle as the earth axis. So that's something really, really nice. Like when I read about that, just how her face, her head, it's inclined. And then the positioning of the mountain flowers on Mary's tunic correspond to the Mexican volcano. So once they lay the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, they correspond to those main volcanoes in Mexico. In the Nican Mopoa, which is Indian Nahuatl language, which means here is recounted. That manuscript that was written back in the 16th century, it is now in the public library in New York. So that's something awesome that we have here in the U.S., right? And yeah, just the next one, right, that it says the arrangement of the stars in the original image or the exact match of the stars on that day. And then later on, they did another study of the position of the stars and some of the flowers. They were able to get some music notes out of the position of the flowers. So you can even go online and you'll find what that music sounds like. So when I started earlier tonight, I started with Archbishop Jose Gomez quote, saying that that responsibility continues through today, which is to build that shrine with our lives, to build a society that glorifies God and is worthy of the dignity of the human person. Participating with the community and gathering, it's that opportunity once again. That's an opportunity to share one another, to share what we have in our hearts. That opportunity where we all can speak one language, the language of love, the language of sharing, the language of serving. That's the message that Our Lady of Guadalupe brought. A message of a new civilization where we all love one another, where we all care for one another. And when we get together in this type of celebrations, that's when we have that opportunity. Because like the title says, we are not only sacred, but we're also social. How are we gonna know what the other person needs? What the other person is going through? How can we be of help to that other person? If we don't give ourselves that opportunity to sit next to that other person, to go and knock on our neighbor's door, to find out what is going on. My husband and I, we used to work at a farm for over 10 years, and it's gonna be 3 years almost that we moved here to the Alloway location. And at the beginning, my kids were like, "No, Mom, why? Like, we've been in West De Pere forever, and why now, and this, and that." It was very, very hard for them. And one of the things that I remember telling them, it's like, I really don't know. You saw that we were trying so hard to find a house to stay in the West De Pere district, right? The only thing that I can tell you is that let's pray. Let's pray together and ask God to show us why in this community, why in this street, why with these neighbors, to help us know why. How can we be of help to the people around us? And it was tough, because that first year, one of our neighbors came and yelled at us for a dog that was barking. and I remember my oldest son just saying, like, "See, Mom, they don't want us here. They don't want us here. They just see that we're Hispanics and they think that we're going to be trouble." And because that person, that's what he said. He's like, "We have never had any trouble here, and that's the last thing we want right now." And it was very hard for my son to hear those words. But then later on, two great neighbors came, knocking on our door and offering us cookies. And they came in that very special moment when my kids were really, like, I'm not exaggerating, they really thought that no one from the neighborhood wanted us there. because we were Hispanics. So I would tell them all the time, let's just pray to God how we can help in this community. We try. We really try. Because I fully understand that it's that moment when we can be of help to others and others to us. Many times we might doubt ourselves on how can I help this person, or maybe I'm not going to be able to help this person. And many times we find out that more than what we can give, they give us. They give us. So I would really like to ask of you to really take this opportunity and give this opportunity to others, for you to know them and them to know you, because that's the message that Our Lady of Guadalupe brought to everyone. Because back then there were no borders. So the words that she told Juan Diego, build the shrine and I want all this message to go, like to be for everyone, that's what she really meant, for everyone, because there were no borders. And even St. John Paul II, because before she would be called patroness of the Americas. And there's a document, I believe, Ecclesia of America or something like that, where he says, patroness of America. Let's start giving that message of unity. No division. She didn't bring a message of division. She brought a message of unity. There's this great document on formed. I don't know if you are familiar with this app, and it's a documentary made by the Knights of Columbus. And there's this person there who says that the message that she brought was not a message of exhortation, but it was a message of love. Our Lady of Guadalupe has been referred to as the mother of civilization of love. So that's something that we need to fully understand and fully take it into our hearts. Carl Anderson from the Knights of Columbus, he said, if the person is created out of love, for love, only a civilization of love is worthy of human dignity. This is fundamentally the message of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So if we're created out of love and for love, then that's the type of civilization that we need. And it's through the community, through participation. How did the beginning of the church, how did it started growing? Because people would see how they loved each other, how they care for one another, how they serve. We need to go back to all of these. I don't know if you have any questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So just to wrap up here. So in John 21, we have Jesus talking with Peter and asking him, right? Like, do you love me? And Jesus asked Peter, he asked him 3 times, right? And at the end, Peter says, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus here, this book from Edward Sri, I just love that description that he gives there. That the word love that they're using, Jesus is using the word agape, and Peter is using the word filio, which filio is more like a brotherly love, right? And agape is that sacrificial love. And on the last question, the third time that Jesus asks Peter, and Peter says, you know that you know everything, right? It's not that Jesus is reducing love, but Jesus is getting down to Peter's level, I want to say it. And that's what I believe that we need to do with one another. To embrace that person where she or he is, no matter language, color, race. It's embrace that person. Make that person feel welcome. Make that person that he or she is a human being. That's the message of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Thank you, Juanita. We'll take your words to heart. And our second speaker is Peter Weiss, who is the Director of Living Justice for the Diocese of Green Bay. And he is also a member of the parish. He is with his wife, parents, 7 children, and they go to Father Alloway Catholic School. So that's a little background on Peter. But immigration had been touched on by Juanita. He will give it a little different direction for us. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Jackie, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be here tonight with you to kind of look at Catholic social teaching through the lens of our local community and on this issue of immigration. As Jackie said, I am the Director of Living Justice for the Diocese, so my role is to promote Catholic social teaching. So this is kind of right in my wheelhouse in thinking about how does our faith call us to live in the world, especially when it comes to these important social issues that we see in our community. I want to just share, and this is a little bit off my script, but I was thinking about this as Juanita was talking, because really, if I want to tell you, give you the best example of what this theme of the call to family, community, and participation is, I want to brag about Juanita here a little bit. So Juanita and I have met over the last couple of years through work and some connections, our kids going to school together, and so bumping into each other there. And then about a year ago, during the last school year, my wife had reached out to Juanita, and a couple times they co-led a bilingual rosary via Zoom for the students and families here at Father Alloway School. And so we got to know them a little bit, but most of our interaction was either over the phone or through Zoom or that sort of thing. And so we got to know Juanita a little bit, kind of knew her family a little bit because her family was participating in these rosaries, but not necessarily somebody who we knew real well at that point. And yet, the first thing that happened is Juanita invited us to her daughter's quinceañera. And so this past summer, we went to their quinceañera. And again, we didn't necessarily know them or the family real well. We were honored to be invited, but we didn't necessarily know them. So we went to the Mass, and it was beautiful, and we went afterwards. They invited us to the reception. And we showed up a little bit late. I think there was a little bit of at a wedding, there's kind of this we call it happy hour, right? Where you can kind of show up and it's like, oh, if you get here at 5, that's fine. If you get here at 6, that's fine. And then the dinner will be at 6:30 or whatever it is. So we kind of thought it was the same thing. So when we showed up, everybody was already sitting down and eating, and we were feeling a little funny about this. And Juanita saw us walk in, and she invited us, and she had us sit down right at the table with her husband and her children. And so here we are, we're showing up late, and they're saying, hey, come sit right here with all of us. And throughout the entire night, she just made us feel so welcome and wanted to tell us about kind of what was going on, especially when things were happening in Spanish. And, just this beautiful example of here is somebody who wanted to welcome us in and be a part of their community. Shortly after this, we had reached out and we said, we want to have you guys over for dinner. We want to have you and your family over for dinner. And so we were arranging a time for this to happen. Now, first thing is we told her right off the bat, don't worry, we're going to take care of all the food, all that stuff. And she insisted, nope, we're bringing food. So we're like, okay, well, I'm not going to argue with you, but, we'll do this. Well, a few hours before they were supposed to come over, I had to reach out to Juanita and tell her that we had been together with my family the day before, and my brother had tested positive for COVID. And I said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to reschedule. We're going to have to find another time to do this because I just don't want to put your family in this situation and risk getting any of you sick. And so, I was able to get a hold of her. And she said to me right away, well, I've already prepared the food, so can I bring it over? And so she drops off, you know, some steaks for us that were all seasoned and everything ready to go, some salsa, I think there was some stuffed peppers that were in there, and this beautiful arrangement of flowers. And again, at this point, you know, we're still getting to know her and her family. Obviously, we think she's fantastic, we think she's awesome, but she just went out. This was somebody who was treating us as family. And so really anything more that I'm going to say tonight doesn't really sort of illustrate it the way that Juanita has illustrated that in a very personal way, Juanita and Julio and her family in a very personal way for us. And so as she was talking tonight, I'm like, I need to share this. So I apologize for taking that little bit of time, and I'll get back to the script here, but I just thought that was important to share. So again, this theme is the call to family, community, and participation, and as Juanita said, it's circled on this idea that we are social creatures. We are made for relationships. We're made to love and to be loved. Human beings are not made for isolation. And when prior to working for the diocese, I taught 7 years at Notre Dame, and I taught the morality and social justice course, and so we would talk about these themes. And with this theme, I always talked about, there's kind of a couple key implications that we might talk about it. First of all, it's rooted in family. Families are the basic social unit of society. And while unfortunately we know that not all families are ideal, that's where we're supposed to learn how to relate and interact. And, you know, our community is meant to be ideally an extension of that love that exists within family. So families are meant to be strengthened and supported. The other key part I would always talk about with the students is kind of two facets of this. One, as human beings, not only do we have a right to participate in society, but we have an obligation. We are all called by being social creatures and by our faith to use the gifts and talents that God has given us and to discern with God, how are you calling through me, through my particular vocation, to bring those gifts and talents in service to the world, in service to my parish, in service to my community, in service to my family, in service to my school, whatever that looks like. That's what this theme is really all about. The second piece to that is if everybody has a right to participate, that also means that we have a responsibility to look around and to see who's missing. The term we sometimes use for this is marginalized. Who's pushed to the margins of society? Who's not being included? Who doesn't have a seat at the table? And that, again, that could be the board table, that could be the dinner table, or that could be the Eucharistic table. And so we have a responsibility and obligation to look around and to say, who's missing from this table? Because the reality is that unless everybody is invited, unless everybody is able to fully bring themselves and the gifts that they have, then the table will always be missing something. And so that's really what this theme kind of challenges us to do, is to invite people into the spaces where maybe they haven't been welcomed, maybe they haven't been invited, and to say, how can we welcome you, and how can we together make our community even stronger? And so a key part of this then is trying to identify who are some of those marginalized groups. And tonight our focus is on one group that too often, both in our own community and in our country as a whole, has been marginalized. And that's migrants, immigrants, refugees, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I want to talk first about some definitions. And I'm not going to get into real technical stuff here, but I just want to kind of lay the groundwork a little bit. So when we look at the immigration system in this country, it's really about making distinctions. It's about frankly, it's about categorizing people. And that's not necessarily by itself just a bad thing, though it can have bad implications to it. So the first main category that we might look at is between citizens and non-citizens. Okay, so a citizen is a person who owes their allegiance to a nation and is therefore entitled to the protections and rights of membership. That's what it means to be a citizen, okay? All these other groups that we're talking about, at least initially, would be non-citizens of some sort, though of course, depending on their circumstances and situation, they may have the opportunity to become a citizen. So then we might talk about migrants. Well, migrant is a very general term to refer to a person who moves from one place to another. Could be for economic reasons, could be for other reasons. With migrant, again, that's a more general term, and so some of these other terms could fit within it, but typically a migrant includes people whether they're moving temporarily or whether they're moving more permanently, okay? If we narrow that down a little bit more, we get to an immigrant. Okay, an immigrant is somebody, a foreigner who comes into a country for the purpose of permanent residence. So there are non-immigrants, think of tourists, think of people who are here on student visas or programs like that, maybe seasonal workers, right, who technically aren't immigrants because they're not coming for permanent residence, they're coming on a temporary basis. And then there are immigrants who are here on seeking to be here on a permanent basis. And then the last category is refugee or asylee, which are really the definition is the same, it just depends on how they arrive, we'll say, in the United States. So in either case, it's a person who is forced to flee his or her home country due to persecution or a well-founded fear of being persecuted on account of his or her nationality, race, religion, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. A refugee is somebody who leaves their country, goes to a second country, and waits to get approved as a refugee and then resettled into a third country. Okay? An asylee is somebody who shows up at the border of a country and requests to come in. So typically, if you look at refugees in our country, they're coming from places all over the world, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, but oftentimes they've left, or technically for a refugee, they've left that country, and maybe Syrians go to Jordan before coming to the United States or another country. Somalis end up often in Kenya, or Congolese in Uganda, different places around the world, Tanzania. An asylee is somebody, and what we've seen is people coming to the southern border and showing up there and saying, I am here, I don't have a visa, but I am here to claim that if I go back to my own country, I'm going to face persecution because of these reasons. So same definition, but just a slightly different kind of spin on it. Now again, I could spend all night going into some of the technicalities and what's what and how do we look at that. But I think for our purposes, while they all have different legal statuses, we're going to focus on two things that they share in common. One, their shared experience of coming to a new place, and two, that with that they are often seen as outsiders. And so how do we welcome them in? And I would say the other reason that I'm going to focus and again use these terms somewhat interchangeably from here on out is the fact that when it comes to what the Catholic faith teaches us about this, it doesn't matter if a person is a refugee or an immigrant. It doesn't matter if they're here temporarily or permanently. It doesn't matter if they're here documented or undocumented. We are still called to treat them the same way. And that's what I want to get into a little bit now. So I want to look at Catholic social teaching on this issue and start with what we can see in Scripture. Anybody who's read really any part of the Bible, but especially if you've read or heard large portions of the Bible, know that the Bible is a story of migration. It's a story of people on the move, in particular the Hebrew people. And we could go through countless examples, whether it's Abraham, whether it's the Exodus story, whether it's the Babylonian exile, all sorts of stories of people being on the move. And so it's not surprising that one of the core principles in the Jewish culture and the Hebrew culture is this idea of welcoming the stranger. In Deuteronomy it says, "You too must befriend the stranger, for you were once strangers in the land of Egypt." That experience of knowing what it's like to move from place to place led them to have that understanding that we are called to welcome the stranger. Likewise, we have the story of the Holy Family, and Juanita talked about this with the story of the Posadas, right? That experience of being on the move, of turning and looking, trying to find somewhere to be able to rest their heads for the night, to be able to give birth to Jesus. Likewise, after Jesus was born, they became refugees. They were forced, out of fear of persecution, to leave their hometown, and they went off to Egypt, and only later were able to move back to their homeland. And so that experience as well. So again, when we think about this, the human part of Jesus, right? The human who had experienced from his very earliest stages being forced out, that in Matthew 25, when he's saying, "Here are all the things, I was a stranger and you welcomed me." That's not just some sort of, theoretical language. Jesus can say that in a very real way, literally having experienced being a stranger and being welcomed. And he's saying that's what we are called as well to do. The church's tradition backs this up as well. It's not just there in scriptures, but all of the themes, or virtually all of the themes of Catholic social teaching, reinforce this idea of welcoming the stranger and reaching out to immigrants and refugees, whether it's the life and dignity of the human person, whether it's called family and community participation, solidarity, option for the poor and vulnerable. All of these themes really reinforce this idea. And I want to look just briefly at one document that came out in 2003. It was a document called Strangers No Longer. It was written by the United States and Mexican bishops together, talking about the situation on the border at the time. And in that, they kind of identified 5 principles of Catholic social teaching on migration. And so again, I think these are just kind of important things for us to keep in mind. First, that people have a right to find opportunities in their homeland. I don't know that there are many people that look to leave their homeland, right? We all want to be there. Now, my 16-year-old daughter, of course, wants to get out. She wants to experience the big city, but we all feel that connection. We don't just want to up and leave just for the sake of up and leaving. So people have a right to find those opportunities in the homeland. But when they can't, they also have a right to go where they can find them. If I couldn't find work for myself here and to raise and support my family, I would naturally go somewhere where I could find that. And so that's something that people have a right to do. At the same time, nations do have a right to control their borders. The church doesn't teach that everybody has to have open borders. They understand that it is the right of nations to have some control over that, to manage that. How much managing, is open for some discussion, but the church does recognize that right for nations. With that said, it also recognizes that refugees and asylees, those fearing persecution, ought to be afforded protection. That people who are coming because they can't turn anywhere else, they deserve some level of protection and support. And regardless, again, the point that I was making before, regardless of how somebody shows up at our door, they're a human being before all other things. And so they have dignity. It means they should be treated with respect, and they also have human rights. Even if they don't have all the legal rights that our country affords, they do have human rights, and those human rights need to be respected. So this is really kind of a framework or a basis. I always look at this, if we're going to judge various policies that we're going to put into place about immigration, for me, this is the starting point. If it's a good policy, it should correspond with these things. If it's violating those things, then I say, okay, this policy leaves something to be desired. We could do better here. And so I look at this it's a framework for us to judge how we are as a nation doing on this issue of immigration through that lens of Catholic social teaching. Lastly, in terms of kind of the church's teaching, I want to touch on Pope Francis. And yes, I know that's not a picture of Pope Francis. That's a picture of Bishop Ricken out in Watoma. Watoma has a large migrant population out at St. Joseph's. And so this was Bishop doing a confirmation out there with the Hispanic community. But Pope Francis has made immigration a priority during his papacy. And he's written a lot and said a lot about this, but he talks about it often in terms of 4 verbs, 4 responsibilities that we have to immigrants and to refugees. He says we are to welcome, to protect, to promote, and integrate. And so again, as we're kind of thinking about what is my call, that's a good place for us to start. How do I welcome people? How do I protect people? How do I promote their well-being? And how do I work to integrate them into the community? So I want to just kind of, say a little bit then about the local situation here. And I'm not going to get into a whole lot, but I just want to highlight a couple things. First of all, by statistics, it's estimated as of 2019 that about 5.9% of Brown County, which is about 15,000 people, are foreign-born. Now, keep in mind, foreign-born could be immigrants, it could be refugees, it could be people who are documented or undocumented. It also could be citizens, people who have come here from another country but have now gained their citizenship. So that's not just any one group of people, but about 15,000 people in Brown County out of about, I think 264 is the number I saw, 264,000 in Brown County, that total, about 15,000 are foreign-born. And we know we don't necessarily, we know the data can tell us about various ethnicities that are here. We don't necessarily have data distilled down to tell us where people are from. So we might be able to say that there's X amount of Hispanic people or Mexican. But again, whether or not they're immigrants could be another story, right? But what we do know that over the years, there's been larger scale migrations of Mexicans, of Hmong, and more recently, we've seen quite a few Somalians coming into our community, and especially recently, and still very small numbers in the grand picture, but the Afghan refugee experience. And that's where I want to kind of focus a little bit of my time right now. So I work within Catholic Charities, and Catholic Charities, starting this past September, began resettling refugees in Brown County. Tony and Resurrection has been a great asset to us in that work, helping out with storage, helping out with collecting supplies, and all sorts of volunteers, all sorts of wonderful things that they've been able to do. But over the last few months, we have resettled a little more than 60, it changes literally by the day, but a little bit more than 60 Afghan refugees into the Green Bay and surrounding areas. One of the cool things is that at this point, most of them, we initially put them in some sort of temporary housing just so, while they're kind of getting settled. Of those 60, there are only 17 right now that are still in temporary housing. The rest, we've been able to find permanent housing for them as they work towards self-sufficiency. And those 17 are one's a large family that just arrived last week, and the other ones are, again, we're slowly working through that process. We're expecting about another 60 between now and the middle of January. At one point they said March. Actually, at one point they maybe said September, and then March, and then February, and then January. They're really pushing to get them off of these military bases around the country and into their final resettlement locations. And so this has been, a process, but I think I could share all sorts of numbers, I could tell you all sorts of things, but I think what might best illustrate for you is a story. And so we have a video. This is, I'll preface it a little bit. This is actually about a gentleman who didn't come here recently. He came here about 5 years ago from Afghanistan. But recently, one of the news stations did a story about him and about his experience leaving Afghanistan, coming here, and now the life that he's made here. And I'll share a little bit more at the end, but if you want to go ahead and cue that up.
Good evening. In our To America series, we're showing you the America you know and the one you may not. You likely know the story of evacuees coming here to the U.S. from Afghanistan.
So tonight, hear from one Afghan refugee about what his experience was like in his own words and how he's now helping new evacuees work to adjust to their lives here in Wisconsin.
My name is Saeed. I came from Afghanistan, 2016.
Born and raised in the Baghlan province of Afghanistan, Saeed Wardak's life changed forever during the war in Afghanistan. To support his family, Saeed worked as an interpreter for the United States military.
My life was not safe over there after work with them.
A job that quickly made him a target for the Taliban.
They called me, they said like, hey, we know you and we know your family. If you don't quit your job, you will be big hurts. And I knew it, even if I quit my job, that wouldn't be safe for me either. They're like animals.
While waiting for his special immigration visa, Saeed went on the run.
I was staying one day in one house, the next day a different house, the next time different house.
After running for nearly a year, he and his wife were granted visas, took the next flight to the U.S., and were finally able to breathe.
That was feeling so good. Like when I was going to my bed, I was like, oh my God, I don't need to run anywhere. I don't need to be scared of anything.
Safe, but far from stable.
Saeed knew he needed help. That's when a friend told him about Catholic Charities. They helped him find a job, gave him some money for necessities, but he still needed a place to live, a process that proved to be challenging.
Because I didn't have a renting history and a credit score. The company here is different. They're not giving you a house or apartment if you don't have a credit score.
Eventually, Saeed found a place to live, but without a car, getting to work was another challenge.
Because I didn't have a driving license, I had a bicycle. I was riding a bicycle to work.
Desperate not to be late, Saeed again started running.
When I was running, there was a guy. He was just passing me. When he saw me, he saw my face, probably at work or something. He doesn't even know my name. He said like, hey, do you work? I said, yeah, we work together over with that place. He said, can I give you a ride? You helped me that in that situation, in that day, in that time, I will never forget it.
Over time, Saeed saved enough money for a car, started a family, and just recently achieved a milestone in his American dream.
And now I bought a house. I have my own house. I move in last month, and I don't need to rent anything anymore.
Now he's working with Catholic Charities to help new Afghan evacuees adjust to life in Wisconsin. Concepts like credit history, buying a cell phone, getting a driver's license, buying groceries are all customs he had to learn the hard way, lessons he wants to pass on.
If I cannot make it so much easy, I will make it a little easy for them to get through the first step easy. Because the first couple months, the first year, it's not easy. Everything is different.
Giving new refugees hope, proving to them anything is possible.
In America, if you work hard, you have opportunity, you can do your business, your own business, you can do anything. It's a freedom. There's nothing for me that I say, oh, I cannot do that. I can do anything if I want it, anything.
After years of struggling, Saeed is now successful at his job at a local cheese factory. He's a husband, a father, a homeowner, and soon an American citizen. Saeed's wife, Sarah, just took her oath to complete her citizenship last week, and Saeed says his oath isn't far behind, ending a 6-year journey that saved his life.
And as I said there, Saeed is now working with us, doing interpretation in addition to his full-time job, but he's been brought on as staff to help with interpretation. And so this is somebody that the story has really come full circle. And like I said, I could sit here and I could talk about all sorts of things, but it's the stories like Saeed, it's the stories that I shared about Juanita that really illustrate what this theme is all about and what the call to family, community, and participation is all about. So again, I'll just leave you with the reminder that we have a responsibility as Catholics to ensure that all people, and in particular the marginalized, are able to fully participate in society. Tonight we focused on one particular group of people that are often marginalized. And so as you leave here tonight, I leave you with this question, which is, how is God calling each one of us? How is God calling me? How is God calling you to welcome, protect, promote, and integrate immigrants and refugees into your community? Thank you so much.
Yeah, wow, thank you both. Can I invite you up to the chairs? We only have a few minutes, a couple of questions to go through. Anybody in church here have a question you want to jump in with? Good.
Just want to ask Juanita, once she gets settled. Juanita, when you work with your people at the parish, how do you get them involved in things like Posada, or even for the traditions of Our Lady of Guadalupe? What specific things do you do to bring them in? Because I'm sure not everybody is in. Am I right?
I go straight to them and ask them
Okay.
and make that personal invitation.
Okay.
That's what I have get to fully see, that they participate more when you make that personal invitation. Yeah, rather than a flyer, something like that. Yep, it's more a personal invitation.
Everywhere that we give people notices that something is about, but then we must follow through with the personal invitation. How do you have the time to do that? You do your
I'm
best.
sorry. Most of the time is there right after or before Mass, or when they come to register. So I'm also responsible to register families. So it's there when they come and we're filling out the registration for them to be parish members. And I start asking questions and just start a conversation, and little things that I get from that conversation, then that's where I invite them. And I tell them, well, I've noticed that you're a great person for this or that, and we're here. Tell us how you can come and help us.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had mentioned, Juanita, in your talk that it takes courage, and part of the courage that you're talking about to just welcome people and invite them and bring them in was to say, I know that journey. You know, you've gone through your own hardships. You've been in neighborhoods where you didn't feel welcome. So when somebody else comes in and they're in a new neighborhood, you already have that experience.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's part of the, not just the immigrant story, but it's also part of our loneliness story in a sense. And my kind of question and challenge for us is, why is it so difficult to be community? Why is it so difficult for us to get beyond our own little settled world, I guess, and to reach out in courage and say, you know, I'm feeling alone, let's get together. I have this experience, let me share it with you. What is it, do you think, within the human nature that almost prevents us, it seems at times, to reach out, to break down borders, to be in community, to welcome our neighbors just down the street?
Well, for me, I believe many times might be the language barrier, not to fully know if that other person is going to be able to understand me. Are we going to be able to communicate with one another? So from my experience would be language barrier.
Language, okay. Language, culture.
Yeah, culture too.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, you know, looking at it, I think from somebody who's part of what we might call the dominant culture, right? I think there's a couple things that are at play. You know, one is a fear of I might do something or say something wrong. Yes. And it might be a little bit uncomfortable. You know, what if I make a mistake here? The best advice I heard about that is to let your uncomfortable become your comfortable. You know, how are you going to put yourself out there? And unless you're willing to risk some discomfort, then we can't, you know, have that. And really, any growth that we have as human beings comes when we get uncomfortable a little bit. You know, it doesn't come when we just say, exercise isn't comfortable. Eating right isn't always comfortable. There's a reason they're called comfort foods, right? But unless we're going to do that, we're not going to be able to experience growth. I also think it's just our own, you know, kind of human weakness and you know, insecurity that we don't want to be vulnerable. So, you know, to admit that we need somebody else involves a little bit of a risk, you know, to admit that we're lonely. I think that's difficult for people to do.
Right.
Juanita, I'm curious about the Hispanic community and the Hmong community, and I'm going to suspect the Afghani community is probably the same way. So much more community family based than I would say most, by stereotype probably, but most Anglo families, a little bit more individualized. So I'm curious about the COVID pandemic, how that has affected particularly the Hispanic families and communities in this area, maybe even more so than some of our Anglo communities.
Yes, it has greatly affected because we are so social. We just want to be sharing with others all the time, talking with others all the time. We always have an excuse or reason to get together. So it has a lot, attendance-wise, mass attendance, and to also for other celebrations like the ones that we talked, there has been that number decrease on the attendance. But yes, because we are social.
I like your reference to social and sacred, you know, because often we nicely differentiate them. I can be religious, I can be sacred at church or in this function, but over here I don't have to be. You know, and really they're the same. I mean, they intertwine with each other in such a way that you cannot really separate them. So it's, you know, I think compartmentalizing who we are and what our responsibilities are and who we can be with and not be with and the PC of that and the political jargon that goes around that is challenging us at times to, no, you're not one of me, whoever that may be, right? Yeah.
At my job, where I try many hard, to remember that, to have that always in mind, so that person, when he or she comes into my office, he feels welcomed. And for example, when they share something like, oh, but I just want to baptize, for example, right? I just want to baptize, but I really don't know this, and I try to tell them, don't worry, we'll learn together. Or God knows, but that little, like that smallest faith that you have, it's the one that has brought you here. And don't worry, we're going to walk together in this. So little by little. So that's something very, very important to feel, to make the other person feel welcome and embrace them where they're at, where we're at one another.
And it's a continual challenge. I mean, I've been in Hispanic situations where I was breaking up fights and making sure that things were not, and I've been in, I'm sure the Afghans have a similar relationship at times. We're all human. Yep. So to idealize that, well, it's always nice over here, it's always nice over there, or, no, we're still humans.
Yep.
And Peter, I would like to ask, you mentioned, is it 60 families that are expected here, Afghan families, by the middle of January? Is that right?
That's right. It's not 60 families, 60 total.
Total.
Some will be families, some will be individuals. Yep.
Okay. What specifically could we, as individuals or as a parish, be doing right now to help with resettlement? I mean, real specific.
Yeah. So, I mean, one, I think, like I said, Resurrection has been doing a lot of great things in terms of helping, we've had lots of people, we've had a great response in the community, both in our Catholic parishes, but also in the wider community to donate supplies and stuff like that. And so there's supplies, there's different things that are needed in that regard. And Catholic Charities on our website, which is catholiccharities.gb.org, has a wish list. I think they've got it set up through Amazon just because it's a little bit easier to say specifically these are the things that are needed. So that's, that's sort of one thing that's needed. Probably the biggest thing throughout all of this has been housing. So if you or somebody has a rental property or that sort of thing, if you're willing to work with, somebody, and obviously Catholic Charities can be engaged as well, but who doesn't have that credit history or that sort of thing, that's a great resource. We're starting to build up a volunteer base. We actually had, just this past weekend, one of the families who arrived here, the mother had a baby. And so, there's doctor's appointments that we need transportation to and from and things like that. And so there's opportunities for people to volunteer and assist with those things that staff doesn't always have the time to be able to take them to. So there's a variety of different options. Like I said, I think the best thing would be if you're interested to go to our website, read a little bit. Again, monetary donations are always helpful because we can direct those to the right places. And of course, as Christians, as people of faith, we can always pray. Both for the people who are here, for the people working through this challenge, but also keep in mind, while many of the people who have come as single men, they are not single men, and they've left wives and children behind. So you can only imagine the experience that they're going through of knowing that this was the best thing for them to do, but also leaving behind that family, and when will they have the opportunity to get reconnected with that family? So, yeah.
Happy to report that Res has sent or sending 14 people through the orientation program to accompany refugees, as you're talking about, for doctor's appointments, grocery visits, those kinds of things. So,
like
so
I said,
far,
Tony,
so good.
and I don't even know all the people that have been involved because that's not my particular work, but I know that Resurrection has been a great resource for us over these last couple months. So,
right.
Appreciate that.
Ruby just gave me the message that it's time to pray.
Okay, Ruby, we know who's in charge around here now.
She probably needs to go outside and go home and get something to eat or whatever else. So I thought it'd be good to, again, take a moment in prayer to end this evening with great gratitude to both of you for being here, Peter and Juanita, to share your lives, your ministries, and for us as a parish to recognize there's always that next step, and there's always a way in which we can be led even more fully into that mystery of how do we be brothers and sisters in our world today. So I found a prayer from Our Lady of Guadalupe, or with her and for her, just asking for that presence of Christ to be with us during this time of Advent. So, dear Mother, we love you. We thank you for your promise to help us in our need. We trust in your love that dries our tears and comforts us. Teach us to find our peace in your Son, Jesus, and bless us every day of our lives. Help us to build a shrine in our hearts Make it as beautiful as the one built for you on the Mount of Tepeyac, a shrine full of trust, hope, and love of Jesus growing stronger each day. Mary, you have chosen to remain with us by giving us your most wonderful and holy self-image on Juan Diego's cloak. May we feel your loving presence as we look upon your face. Like Juan, give us the courage to bring your message of hope to everyone. You are our mother and our inspiration. Hear our prayers and answer us. As we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you for being here this evening, and blessings to all of you on your journey, whether you're a migrant, an immigrant, and a refugee, or an
Citizen.
asylee. I learned that one tonight.
Citizen, yeah.
Asylee?
Yep.
Yeah, that too. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.